On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
Good evening, my friends, and welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored with me, Jeremy Carr. Now, the big man's still away on his summer break, but we'll do our best to bring you the usual fistful of big interviews and feisty debates. And to tell you the truth, I'm rather getting used to filling in for Morgan. I've started arguing with myself in the mirror when I get out of the shower. I had a nightmare about Meghan Markle last night. Certain cabinet ministers have started crossing the road in terror to avoid me. And most notably, my friends, I've broken the habit of a lifetime today. I've started twittering. Whatever that means. Look at this, there I am, at @JKyleOfficial. Like an intercity express, you'll find me on all platforms, but I will arrive on time, and I'm self-driven. My tin hat's on, so use me and abuse me. More of the former, if you don't mind. But, importantly, I really would love to hear from you, because all of this week we're bringing you analysis and expert insights on Britain's summer of strife, the cost of living crisis. We'll talk food, we'll talk energy prices, transport, and much, much more. And we want to know how you're coping. And actually not, so please do not be shy. Right, first tonight, the cost of living crisis and what to do about it. New data today from the Post Office reveals that as the summer heats up, more and more people are going back to cold, hard cash. The Post Office handled more than 800 million quid in personal cash withdrawals in July, the most since records began, and a spike of 20% on last year. Thought to be due quite literally to people counting the pennies and helping themselves to budget. Surely just another sign of a creeping crisis that is engulfing every single one of us. Today we're going to talk about the surging price of food, and joining me now are restaurateur and celebrity chef Anthony Worrell-Thompson and financial expert Gemma Godfrey. Guys, welcome. We were talking there in the introduction. Start with you, Anthony. It's not getting any easier, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, everywhere you go, I mean, I've got restaurants, I mean, the prices have gone absolutely skyrocketing. I mean, it's not just the fuel. To just take a 20-litre tub of oil, $17.99 to $42.99. Unbelievable. Lamb up a third, beef up more than a third. And that's going to be reflected in the supermarket as well. You know, they do try and keep their prices down, but they're being charged the prices.
So, as a restaurateur, your prices are going up, and you know that's because your suppliers' prices are going up.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what is it telling you? What about business? Are less and less people eating out? I mean, I was in a restaurant on Saturday night, right, with my kids, and it was ridiculous. It took hours. It took 2 hours, and the guy said to me, "Jez, there's no staff.
Yeah.
There's no suppliers. We're really, really struggling."
It is tough. I think we're lucky. I think we've become a destination restaurant, so people are going out for anniversaries, birthdays, that sort of thing. So I think what's cut back is the everyday eating, where people would maybe eat out 2 or 3 times a week as a matter of course. And I think now it's going to move much more to celebrity stuff, where you're really enjoying the occasion. It's a special occasion, you know. And food prices, I mean, it's going to be a lot of restaurants, from our point of view, who go down the tubes, you know.
What about people who wouldn't be able to afford to go to a restaurant? We're talking about everyday foodstuffs. We're talking about prices going through the roof in all levels of supermarkets. We've talked about Ukraine and grain, but what is... I mean, we talked about a hosepipe ban the other day and crops dying and,
yes.
and that. What is essentially causing this, and what hope can we give?
I think a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon, personally. I mean, you know, logistics have gone up, you know, transport's gone big time, staff wages have gone up a lot more than they say they have in the press, from my point of view. And I think it's, obviously, you know, utilities, massive. People they're not dropping their rents. It's just, and also the Ukraine war, obviously, is putting a huge...
I've got one question. You know, when prices go up and suppliers and restaurateurs and supermarkets increase their prices, and I mean this respectfully, when it balances itself out and prices lower, then do supermarkets and restaurants show the reduction as quickly as they show the increase?
No, I've got a nasty feeling they won't. You know, when they drop the VAT in restaurants, you didn't notice many price drops in the restaurants, you know, when he dropped the VAT. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, you know, just as a vicious example, I mean, our utilities, we used to pay 12 grand. Now we're paying 37 to 40 grand.
It's ridiculous. Gemma Godfrey is going to join me every day this week, financial expert. And actually, we were talking last week, and you said, I try and give people tips. And in the past, maybe people would have thought, what's the point? But it's becoming real. And, you know, people will say to me, oh, why are you peddling this? Because it's true, right?
It is. It's absolutely critical. I mean, we're going to see, in the wintertime, we're going to see families trying to choose between feeding their families or staying warm. And when you're looking at those edges, it means that these small changes can make a difference. And there are lots of people that are struggling. But there are things that people could do. I mean, there's a website, there's a government website where they've got, it's called Help for Households, and they've actually put a lot of the deals there. So, for example, you've got all the deals with the supermarkets are making, you know, feed your family for a £5, those types of deals. So that's a good place to start. OK, let's not get stung. There's also beware of, don't go to convenience stores because you pay for the convenience, but also then don't travel too far where you're paying too much in petrol. And then be careful of loyalty programmes, compare them. And I think the last one is, we talk about prices increasing. What we're not talking about is sizes shrinking. Is that for the same thing, you're going out and you're not getting as much as you used to.
16 million households will fall into food poverty. Let's just leave that out there. That's just...
Crazy.
And I don't... You know, listen, we can be as political or non-political as we want. Is it time for the government? There's lots of stuff today, you know, Johnson's on holiday, the government's paralysed, we're waiting for this leadership debate. I'll nail my colours, I think it's ludicrous, but Boris Johnson can't win, can he? Because they told him not to do anything fiscally because he's not the Prime Minister, and if he did get involved. But should we not be doing something? Should there not be some sort of help right now from the government?
Definitely.
Yeah, there should be some form of support, because what we're hearing now is about tax cuts. They all come later on. What people actually need is people are living hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And I think one area where we could have an improvement is around waste. I mean, we tend to waste about a quarter of our food.
Well, I want to say this to you, Anthony, because everybody goes on about food wastage. There is always going to be food wastage. How can we not... Recycle's the wrong word. How can we not be making that more available to the people that need it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one thing, but the key is also shopping when you need it, not thinking, oh, I might need it. You know, don't do the big shop anymore. I mean, OK, it's going to use a little bit more petrol, maybe, but buy things as you need them, fresh things.
But there's also another idea. What you could do is, if you take your weekly food shop, you take your receipt, you put it on your fridge, and then every time at the end of the week you've actually thrown something away, you cross it off, and then you end up with a list of just the items you need. Can
I say something that would come from my mum, God rest her soul, but this probably wouldn't be popular with everybody? Is it time that... there is a crisis, I absolutely accept that, but should not more families be advised, helped, shown to go back to basics? Are we not, also, if we're honest, a society that is using convenience foods and not doing what they did in the old days without wanting to sound ancient, right?
I personally think they should tax what I call unnecessary food. So all processed foods, all foods that are ready meals, and make people have to pay. If they want convenience like that, they want to be lazy, they don't want to cook, tax them on that. And I think, but the essentials in life, we should draw up a list of what's essential, and ideally, we should do deals with supermarkets as those prices can come down. I mean, supermarkets have been getting rid of a lot of their sort of value ranges, which is wrong. They should be bringing those back and trying to help the impoverished families, you know?
You were going to say something there. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the only challenge is hard-working. There are lots of, you know, single-parent families, hard-working families that have been pushed down to using convenience food, and it isn't as healthy, and they're getting into that rut. So I think there are a lot of families out there that don't know where to turn. They've been told to do ready meals. Now they're not healthy. Now those prices are going up. And we heard today a certain supermarket has brought out a value range, and because they coloured it yellow, and yellow is known for reduced, they're getting a lot of backlash that people are now embarrassed to use it, rather than it being promoted as a way to save money.
This is going to affect everybody: students, care homes, you know, all sorts of people. And as I say, we do this. We're going to do this cost of living crisis every single week with you, Gemma, every night this week, and we're going to look at different parts. But food, we had the chairman of or the president of the NFU on Friday, and he was saying, you know, this drought, this lack of water, the crops are dying, they're more expensive. I mean, it is possible in this country to wake up every day and think, what the hell is next?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, I love using the example of milk, right? Yeah. You get an increased price of gas because obviously energy prices are going up. That means that fertiliser is getting more expensive. It's getting more expensive to feed cattle. Then you have the labour, then you have the machinery. In every aspect, food is getting more expensive. And as we said, we're going towards the winter when people are going to be spending more on energy.
So we all agree there's a problem, and we all think that the government needs to do something, certainly needs to be a bit more visible, but people are going to have to, which again, going back to the older generation, they're going to say, you know, you're going to have to get your head down and do something about this. What can we say? What can people, just a few things, what can people do to make that budget stretch, to make that food shop easier?
Batch cooking for me, I mean, OK, not everyone's going to afford a freezer, but if you could make stuff in bulk, doesn't take any longer to cook than a small portion, so you can batch it up, bag it up, tub it up and freeze it, put a date on it, know when you've frozen it. I think the supermarket's got to help by having less packaging, so someone could pick up a couple of tomatoes instead of a whole carton of tomatoes.
What about a cut of meat? Help me out. I want to make a batch. People watching this, what's a good cheap cut of meat that's good?
We would use something like clod and sticking, which is a good stewing stuff. You get the bavettes. Topside is a boring old piece of meat. It's used for roasting in this country, but it's actually very dry. But good mince, you know, used mince, it is so cheap. And I think use the time of the supermarkets when prices are going to be down, end of the evening, first thing in the morning. You've got to shop around and don't buy unnecessary goods and go with a shopping list, because people impulse buy. And that's why cash is coming in, because people don't want to run up a credit card because they're tempted to that.
Gemma, final word from you?
I just think that the more people shop around, the better deals obviously you can get, and the more you're encouraging supermarkets to then remain competitive as well. But honestly, we need more help with food banks. There are so many families out there that are really struggling. Well,
we're going to talk about food banks later in the week. You know, people would assume that they're open all the time. They're not. People would assume that they're heavily, you know, supported. They're not. There's all sorts of stuff. But thank you both very much. Next on Uncensored, rail fails and pumped-up petrol prices are causing misery for millions. We'll ask what's fueling Britain's transport crisis and, more importantly, how can we fix it? a road riddle. How do you get to use the highways with no licence, no insurance, without paying any tax and with absolutely no speed limit? The answer is, of course, as easy as riding a bike. That's my bell. I promise you one thing, this is the only time ever you'll see me doing this. I get irrationally angry about cyclists, I mean it. We wrote this, don't come near me, I'm a psychopath. But seriously, nice. What's not to loathe? There's the toy hoys. They dress up like the Tour de France from 15-minute pedal to work. You've got the chain gangs, usually 4 of them, riding side by side like some massive peloton, whilst us tax-paying motorists queue behind, getting later and later and more irate. You've got the Sigourney Weavers, through the mist, swerving like a shopping trolley with a dodgy wheel. And your Jeremy Vines, whoever he is, with more cameras than Kodak, picking fights and running red lights. It's good news, though. It turns out I'm not the only one who thinks these two-tired tyrants have run out of road. Today, the government announced, thank God, it might just force cyclists to buy insurance, follow speed limits, pay fines for ignoring the laws of our road. So at last, says me with one hand off the wheel, a common-sense reform bringing cycling into the 21st century. Almost everyone's had plans derailed by the biggest train walkouts in 30 years. That Mick Lynch has ideas above his station, doesn't he? More strikes than a 10-pin bowler. The 3 more are planned this month, and you can forget about London Underground. They work less days than Santa Claus. But, my friends, at least there's one faithful engine we can always rely on. That's right! Thomas the Tank Engine, that faithful symbol of British railroad reliability and service with a smile. But sadly, no more. Thomas has tanked. I took my kid to see him today. There we are, lovely. Sadly, we discovered on arrival that Thomas couldn't perform properly because it was too hot. Apparently, sparks from his engine could cause fires in the hot weather, so he could only move 100 metres in and out of the station. So there you have it, my friends. Even Thomas has packed it in. Now, there is, of course, a serious side to this, so let's get back on track before I run out of steam and lose my train of thought. Cost of living. It's not just public transport facing crisis. For many people, the cost of fuel is becoming a very serious problem. Record prices mean just getting to work for many is becoming too expensive. The cost of oil and gas, made worse by the war in Ukraine, is driving up prices and squeezing supply. So much so that today we learned, this is just extraordinary, the UK is now expecting planned power cuts this winter. Great. Hold on. Excuse me. Hello. Rob, I need some money for the meter, mate.
We haven't got any cash left.
Brilliant, we've got no cash. Bingo! Thank you very much. Did you like that? Oh, that was good. Yeah. Right, first tonight. Those painful prices at the pumps. Fuel costs have finally started to fall, but they're still near record highs. The RAC today says the gap between forecourt prices and wholesale prices is the widest in almost a decade. And at the start of the week, the average petrol price at Britain's biggest 4 supermarkets was £1.74 a litre, diesel at £1.86. Now, we did some research. The cheapest place to fill up is here, Dalehead Garage in Hawes in North Yorkshire. Great for the good people of Hawes, but it's 250 miles away from this studio, so my little Fiat 500, in brackets, trying to sound like Rishi Sunak, close brackets, that's close to 100 squid round trip just to get there. I wrote this. So if you can't pop into Hawes, what can you do? Joining me now, thank you, our financial expert Gemma Godfrey here every night, former Top Gear presenter and motoring legend Steve Berry, and my good old mate Howard Cox from the campaign group Fair Fuel UK. I'm going to start with you, Howard. A lot of people will talk about the difference between the forecourt price and what it costs, you know, the supplier or whatever. You're calling for a fuel duty cut of 25p per litre. Quick question. Can we afford that?
Absolutely. In the last year, this government is wallowing in an extra $4 billion of VAT because of the high prices. And don't forget, the VAT is on the duty as well. It's a double taxation. And fundamentally, as you mentioned earlier, the wholesale price, and let's get this right, June the 1st, for example, was 30p, or it's now 30p less than it was in June the 1st.
Why?
And yet the retail price has gone up 4p.
Why? I mean, look, Steve, help me out. Why aren't supermarkets lowering their prices more to almost save the motoring industry? Because we are hearing real stories of people who might not be able to get their kids to school, people who might not be able to get to work. I mean, I say it, and I've said it with Gemma every night this week. you wake up in this country and you think, what is next? People cannot afford petrol. Why is something not being done?
But we're talking about it, and a lot of other people are starting to talk about it. I think people are... I nearly said something I shouldn't. I think people are getting angry, genuinely angry about this. And I think that's why we're having this conversation. And it's happening in homes and workplaces and businesses and in pubs all over the country. People are starting to ask that question. Why isn't it lower? Why isn't the price been lowered? And I think they're going to have to react. And some are reacting, and because the others have, they charge what they think they can get.
Yeah, but here's an interesting thing. That research of the garage in Great Hawes is people are queuing down the road to go to that garage. So does that, in a business way, say to you that if garages take the decision to be competitive, they will do better? But I don't understand. Again, we're going to bring it, Gemma, back to the government. You know, I watch these two people vying to get to number 10, promising this, promising that. But yet again, nobody from the government, front and centre, saying, we know you're struggling in another way. And polio today, that's something else. But why, Howard, to me, it makes so much sense to cut that and reduce some pain for people.
Well, we've got two askers. One is to cut fuel duty. Germany have done it by 25p. France have done it by 20p. Spain have done it by 20p. And Ireland 17p. We did it by 5p in March at the spring statement, and it didn't touch the sides. We didn't see it.
But I remember that. It was £2 a litre, and he said, oh, this massive thing, you've taken 5p off. And I remember that exact day, Gemma, right? Because, and I think we talked on the radio, it was 1.95. It came down to 1.90. By the time I parked the car about 100 yards down the road, that one had gone to £2. It's not fair, is it?
It's not fair. And what we're seeing is prices, they're increasing prices very quickly. So it's not the case that actually, changes take a lot of time to implement. Very quick to increase prices, but they haven't decreased the prices as much as they should do. And it's real people are playing now. It's a postcode lottery of where you live to be able to get cheaper petrol.
Tips?
Well, OK, so in terms of tips, again, we've seen such a huge increase in petrol prices that, you know, everybody is struggling. But it's the simple things like, I mean, you're not going to like this one, but, you know, don't accelerate so hard, empty your boot.
Why is he not going to like that?
Well, you know, if you like driving fast, you know, accelerating hard is going to increase your fuel consumption. An extra 25 kilograms in your boot is going to increase your fuel consumption by a percentage. In this hot weather, here's a tough one, if you put on air conditioning, that will also increase your fuel consumption. But if you decrease it and open your windows, that can increase the drag.
Piers Morgan sent me a text earlier. Could I ask, when you're talking about turning down the AC, what about his new car with the cold seats and the hot and cold thing for his coffee? What's he supposed to do about that?
Very, very tough. And if he's got the roof down as well, that could create a drag as well.
Yeah,
so I feel
horrible. Must be difficult in LA. Moving on. Could I just feel for Piers Morgan a second? Anyway, moving on. Steve, the motoring industry. Is there more that the motoring industry can do?
Not really. It's too short term. This has happened very recently, hasn't it? And these are the dying days of dead tree juice. I mean, the electric future is going to happen before we know it. There is one advantage to this panic over fuel prices, though. You can buy some very tasty motors very cheaply. A pal of mine just bought a Porsche Cayenne S with a full service history, about 11 years old, very nice order, 2,000 of your English pounds. I got offered a Mercedes coupe the other day, 5-litre V8. So when you say that to people now, they're like, oh my God, the only thing that won't pass is a petrol station. The car was £1,000. Nobody wants those big old barges. So if you ever lusted after one, now is the time.
Electric motors?
Look how much the cars cost in the first place. Yes, you're saving money by plugging it in, and people are very smug about all that, and they think they're saving the planet. But the initial purchase price is so high.
Yeah.
Cradle to grave. If you compare cradle to grave for an electric vehicle with internal combustion engine, there's hardly any difference in terms of saving the planet, in terms of CO2 emissions.
Do you know what the greenest vehicle, and they were green, so there's a clue, that was ever made was because of cradle to grave?
What?
The World War II Jeep.
Yeah.
Because it's how long they keep going for. And people, one of the things that motorists can do is not chop and change the car so much. You know, I mean, the old days of thinking, oh, it's going to be all worn out at 100,000 miles. A good, you know...
Or drive it into the ground.
Just keep it until it falls. And then, if you've got a big motor these days, you're getting 500 quid for scrap for a big one.
Howard, Fairfield UK campaign has done such a lot of good. You always tell me that politicians are listening. You know, we've heard then France has done it, Germany's done it. What do we need? Do the companies need pressure brought on them by our political leaders because there's no government in sight? That's why. I mean, that's why I said to you at the beginning. I would have thought that one of those two leadership candidates would have thought, "Oh, this is a really good opportunity. Maybe they will. I don't know." Are you getting through to the politicians with your message, do you think?
Well, I've met with both of them individually.
Have you?
In the last
Who's going to win?
3 weeks. Liz is going to win with ease.
course,
And simply, the reason is the tax-cutting issue is the big one, of course. But I'm afraid Rishi is actually, it was found by Bloomberg, who actually published, that he wants to put green taxes on diesel and petrol. We're already paying the highest taxes in the world. We're already paying the highest petrol in the world. And here's the thing, Jeremy. It's very important to understand our second ask is we've got Ofgem, Ofcom, Ofwat. Why haven't we got something for pump watch? There are 37 million drivers in this country, and they don't have any price protection whatsoever.
Do you believe them both? Well, Liz will win. We all know that. Do you believe her when she says she'll get a grip of this? Yes or no?
I think yes, she will. I'm more convinced. I was a fan of Penny Mordaunt. That's who I was going for, because she immediately came out and said she's going to cut fuel duty. Obviously, that's my campaign.
I worry about the promises that they make. I'm going to throw something out. Watch Steve Berry's face. I don't want to upset cyclists, but I have absolutely no idea why cyclists who seem to dominate our roads nowadays and don't have to pay anything in petrol, don't have to pay road tax themselves or get insured. One has to move about 5 feet out the way, you get abused, they take pictures of you. Why aren't they taking some responsibility?
Well, what do you want me to say?
Do you agree?
With every single syllable you just...
And they shave their legs to go faster, which does my head in. But it's true, isn't it? Cyclists. Do you not think they should be taxed?
Yes, they should, absolutely. And they should have an MOT on their motorbike.
And they should have to wear a helmet. And they should have some sort of identification. Yeah. And don't say you can't do it, because they already do it in Denmark.
We're paying for petrol, you've got everything you want on the roads, and you don't pay any money. Gemma, what, no?
Well, I also think that they're doing what they need to for their health as well. They're getting out, they're doing exercise. I don't know, I think that we want to encourage people to be doing more, because I think during the pandemic, people's health suffered.
I get that, but should they not shoulder some of the burden? Because motorists are shouldering a ridiculous...
Can they please use the cycle lanes? That'd be nice.
OK, I see that.
Are you a cyclist?
I'm not a cyclist, I just feel like,
What?
Well, there's a place for people...
There is a place, but they're taking over our roads. And
the velodrome, that's a place for it.
The velodrome, yeah. So you hope this message, this cut that you want in fuel duty of 25p, you're hopeful that Liz Truss will listen, you're hopeful that the next Prime Minister, we believe it will be her, will do this. Because if it doesn't happen, very briefly from all three of you, what happens?
Well, we're in dire straits. It's impacting on the economy. As you made the point, people are really suffering. People can't even afford to fill their car to go to medical appointments, to hospitals. Yeah. There's that issue that's happening.
Fact.
They're not going to the supermarket once a week. They're going once a month now, so it's impacting on the high street. The whole thing is costing a problem. I'm backed by the Road Haulage Association, and something like 50% of a trucker's costs is fuel.
Unbelievable. Steve, briefly?
The economy's got to get back from the pandemic. People have got to get back to work. If they can't afford to drive to the place that they do their work, how are we going to do that?
Brilliant. Guys, thank you so much. Next on Uncensored, inflation hits 10%. This for the first time in 40 years, and food prices are surging. The big question, how are we going to beat punishing prices at the tills? We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is Talk TV.
Welcome back to Uncensored, my friends. So apparently, sad news. It's the beginning of the end. Removal vans are at 10 Downing Street. Boris is getting the exit done. He's taking back control of Carrie's golden wallpaper. And fittingly, in a financial emergency, today's report suggests that the PM will serve the remainder of his premiership at the Chequers mansion in Buckinghamshire. A source says he wants to keep calm and carry on, doing absolutely nothing. Of course, that's all speculation. The removal vans may well simply be packing for his next holiday, or perhaps they've just been to the cash machine in Mayfair before doing the weekly shop. Because based on today's inflation figures, that's where we're heading, my friends. Rocketing food prices have pushed inflation above 10% for the first time since 1982. Prices, I have to be honest, are now higher than Keith Richards on New Year's Eve. And this is what it means for shoppers. Chills at the tills. Consoling in the aisles, it's murder on the Tesco's Express. Now, we've done a survey of the UK's biggest supermarkets and found that a year ago, look at this. This is a medium white loaf of bread. This is very good. It comes from the Kyle supermarket, which, by the way, is actually quite slow because we can't afford the electricity anyway. It was £1.05. Now, oh, it's there! Now it's £1.20, which is an increase of 15%, and it goes on. Hopefully a bit quicker. A tin of beans, right, a fixture on everybody's cupboard, was 85p. Very quick. It's not here yet, see? Come on, wind it up. There it is, see? It's now £1.21. That's a massive 42% increase. And they'll have gone up another 10% by the time these graphics are finished, I should imagine. 6 eggs, different colours, probably one smashed. They used to be £1.72. Moving quickly. And here they are, unfertilised. But now they've gone up 15%, nearly £2 at £1.97. Moving back. Pack of bacon. It's going well, isn't it? £2 and threepence. That's what my old girl used to say. And over here, in about a minute... Come on, then. Wine. Oh, there's the bacon. We see it's now £2.68. That is up 32%. These, by the way, of course, are some of the ingredients for the once humble, full English breakfast, an ordinary morning staple for thousands of working people. But at this rate, they'll probably only be serving it at the Dorchester and Chequers. In a moment, our experts will have their say on what the hell we're going to do about it. But first, and this is important, we got out on the streets because we wanted to know what you thought. Have a look at this.
We know children with a cost of living who they evidently come to school having not been fed, but they don't want to say it, they don't want to mention it at all.
The cost of living is going up by inflation. Oh, God. Inflation is like, can I swear? I can't swear, right? Okay, cool.
Because they're going to go so high so quickly.
But at the moment, it's mostly like travel and stuff is like really bad, but also I'm just about to move into a house, so I'm like really concerned about what my bill's going to kind of start out as.
Joining me now is our financial expert, Gemma Godfrey, and the former founder and managing director of the 99p store, Hussein Lalani. Gemma, welcome. Hussein, welcome. We've been talking about this for 2 weeks. Now inflation, the highest for 40 years at 10%. And just an attempt by us to explain how staple food is almost, for many people, impossible. And I know we say it every night, but we have to say it every night. What are people supposed to do, Jem?
And also, well, the biggest problem with this is that when we talk about staple food is a bigger percentage of people's weekly budget and when they're the worst off. So it means that for the worst off, they're actually not seeing 10% inflation, that it could be about double. So people are really struggling and they're spending more on credit cards. But in terms of what they could do, obviously it's a very, very tough time. And honestly, many families are really struggling. But there's, for example, there's, help for households. So there's Feed Your Family for £5 at Sainsbury's. There's £1 children's meal at Asda. There's, you can get free children's meals in the cafe of Morrison's. So
that's really good.
A lot of the supermarkets are trying to do what they can. But one of the most, I think, savvy things people can do is also change the time in which they shop. So, yes, because, yellow sticker items, a lot of the supermarkets start to discount their food and they do it at certain times of the day.
Well, that's good because there's so much food that's wasted, right?
Absolutely. And not only that, but there was a family, it was again reported across the press, that they got £85 worth of food for £14 a few years ago. And so it means that, again, the 3 times to watch out for are either they'll put those yellow sticker items for ones that are approaching best before dates overnight, so go first thing in the morning, or it'll happen just after the lunchtime rush, or an hour just before closing. And the key thing there is to try and pick freezable food because it is approaching its best before date, but if you can freeze it, it'll last for longer. Amazing
as ever. Hussein, the 99p store was a business you set up. You sold it to Poundland in 2015. I wouldn't, I think, be unfair to say that 7 or 8 years ago people would go, Poundland, many people, right? The reality is that these stores now are providing staple things for people because of what's going on. How bad is it out there?
It's bad, and we saw inflation creeping up when we sold our stores. But what's happened in the last 6 months is unprecedented. You know, Poundland stopped selling products for £1 5 or 6 years ago after they acquired us. It's really £1 plus. You only find a handful of products for £1 in a pound store. And, you know, food inflation is one key problem, but you can't ignore energy costs going up.
Well, I've actually got some breaking news, which is really interesting, and it caused you to look at me weirdly. Ofgem director Christine Farnish has quit tonight over the energy price cap. What does that mean? Why? Because she can't handle...
Well, the biggest pushback people have had is, what's an energy price cap when it's not capping anything?
Yeah.
And also
it's a target, it's not a cap.
Exactly. And also the problem is that they used to adjust it, if it was going to be adjusted at all, once every 6 months. And they recently came out and said they're going to be adjusting it every 3 months, obviously to allow it to fall, but really it's to allow it to rise much more quickly as well. So she's not... The big criticism was that the Ofgem didn't do enough to protect consumers. And during that time, obviously, energy companies have benefited.
Unbelievable. Hussein, how do we get out of this? For people watching who watch and go, yes, but we know about that. Inflation up, food prices through the roof, petrol, diesel, electricity, gas.
So what we've got to do is we've got to focus on the most vulnerable in society.
Quite right.
The average household income is about £30,000. And, you know, they will weather the storm. They'll have to cut back. The middle class will maybe not go out for the fancy meal, not get a new sofa or a new TV. But the most vulnerable in society, the poorest in society, those on benefits, those on universal credit. Because as you so rightly said, food and energy makes up a bigger proportion of the small amount of money they get. And that's what we've got to focus on. So one great idea I've heard recently is to have social pricing for energy for those most vulnerable in our society.
Good idea.
Having a special tariff just for them.
Can I do something that I do all the time, and I do it without apologising? I absolutely know what you're saying about people on benefits and people on universal credit, but I talk about jams every single night in the show. They're just about managing, because people who are not on benefits and do not get universal credit, and both the couple's partners work and they pay all their bills and they have jack left. And those people could do with help as well, because they are right on the line. But you're right. Why can't we...
They're right on the line, and the danger is...
that they will fall over the line.
And all of a sudden, they won't be able to keep up with their mortgage payments. And then, you know, we've got issues of homelessness, more people losing their homes. Interest rates are going up. That's another factor that's now affecting every household budget. And, you know, the scary thing is this is a cascade, because the family stops going out for meals. So the restaurant now suffers. The workers in the restaurants get laid off. More unemployment. And, you know, people stop going out shopping to buy luxury items, buying a new suit or a pair of trousers. Again, retailers suffer, the employees suffer, the whole logistics chain.
Did nobody... You're a businessman, I'm not, right? But both of you... Cascade's a great word. It's like the dam has been broken and everything is falling about our feet. Did nobody see this coming? I mean, and people will go, oh, Boris, but I mean, I've heard about Ukraine, I've heard about the pandemic, I've heard... But the monumental scale of how people's lives are going to be impacted has, I think, shocked everybody. The government as well, or not?
Well, the thing is that as soon as you had the Russia-Ukraine conflict, that was inevitably, on day one, that was going to affect the oil price. If that was going to affect the oil price, it's going to affect energy bills and it's going to affect everything. What's really interesting is there is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the wholesale price of flour, of wheat, and also of oil has actually come down recently. But it'll take about 6 months for that to filter through to supermarkets. And in those 6 months, if we're having such a damaging effect on consumers and not going out and buying as much, businesses then suffer, more jobs are lost, and by the time that actually filters through, the economy's already been damaged.
And then we're talking about winter as well.
And yeah,
exacerbating every problem.
It's terrifying for so many families. Yeah. You know, I used to be on the board of Age UK, and we look after the elders in our society. They're terrified.
Yeah,
you know, they can barely afford electricity and heat anyway, and they've got winter approaching, and right now there's no help. What is £100 energy credit going to do for them? You know, the advice they're getting now is get some more blankets.
That's why I got so upset about that story with Roy Muller, who's worked all of his life and paid his taxes in his house in Birmingham, being, you know, just dealing with Yobs, you know, threatening him each and every day and wants to leave a house he's been in for 44 years. Can we, both of you, is there anything you can say to give people hope? Because I don't want to sit here and say, you know, sugar-coated, it's not great, but you've been really constructive over the last 2 weeks. What can you say, Gem?
Well, I think one of the big stark stats I saw recently is the fact that people are now using their credit cards to buy essential goods. It's not for luxury items anymore, it's for essential goods, which means that people are more likely to be falling into debt, and obviously that gets more and more expensive. So things like becoming a little bit more savvy about where you shop, be aware of convenience stores, try to go to larger stores, and look at loyalty programmes, but also try and compare them. You know, all these little small things. Look, it's tiny things. But at times like this, it really is about surviving, not thriving. It's about trying to survive this period to be able to get through the winter.
Hussein, just sum it up for me. What would you say to people watching this tonight?
I would say, watch your pennies. You know, when I had my stores, you know, it was a 99p store, and we said, watch that, you know, we give you a penny change. But today, more than ever, that penny change really does count. And you're right, you know, trade down, go to different stores, shop around, buy frozen products because they last longer, less likely to spoil. And, you know, just tighten your belts and, you know, let's just hold tight and try to weather the storm. But it won't last forever, you know.
And that's the message.
And it won't, you know, it won't last forever. Eventually, we will get out of this war with Ukraine. You know, Russia will withdraw from Ukraine, and that will get the balance right.
Really good, thank you. Love it. Gemma Godfrey, Hussein Lalani, former MD of 99p Store. Next on Uncensored, students received their A-level results this week, but do you need to go to university to be a success? We'll discuss that after this break. Welcome back, my friends. Now, settle down, settle down. Stop talking about you lot. I might be the substitute teacher while that nasty Mr Morgan's away, but you don't intimidate me, thank you very much. Of course, A-level results and celebrations for many today, commiserations for some, and for those licking their wounds tonight, here's a thought that will balance your minds. Prince Harry got 1 B and a D and he retired at 30, which proves that anything's possible if you believe in yourself, and your nan just so happens to be the Queen. Now, the best grades of A and A star were down, look at this, we're doing it again, look at the money that's spent, 8.4% on last year, which sounds like bad news, but remember this, is the first year since the pandemic that students sat real exams. Those top grades are actually up 11% on pre-pandemic levels, and despite fierce competition, today 425,830 students have secured a place at a UK university, which is a brand new record. Now, one of those lucky people is my daughter, Alice. She got straight A's. She's off to the university of her choice. I can't mention which one because nobody will talk to her. But, Al, so proud and so happy that you've managed to achieve your dreams. We're joined now, we're joined now by head teacher Serge. Can you say your surname, please?
Sophia.
Sophia, I'm only joking. A financial expert, Gemma Godfrey, and Sam Prince, Made in Chelsea star and business owner, who actually left school at 16 and has a very interesting story to tell. Not a lot of time. Serge, let's start with you. I'm probably a bit old-fashioned, and I want to point out straight away, I went to university, did a meaningless course, had 3 years of having a great time, and probably would have done what I did if I didn't do it. Are we now at a point where going to university is not as important, relevant and guaranteed to give you a job as it was in the past?
Depends.
Okay.
Depends what you want to go to university for.
Yep.
For me, I think for certain professions it's absolutely essential, but for others, no. And I think we lack alternatives for kids with fantastic talents that I know I horsewhip down the academic route with lovely kids who maybe, if we brought in apprenticeships, etc., you know, early on, target these kids, something that can be proud of, that are credible. That's a far better way to go for an awful lot of kids without them leaving university, which, as you said, a meaningless course with huge debt and perhaps not as employable as they were 3 years before.
Two things to you, Sam, because I know you probably think like I think. I'm not being disrespectful. I think there's too many courses and too many colleges. I think kids end up in huge amounts of debt, and it is not a byword to get a job anymore. That is not saying that lots of people who get degrees don't succeed, but does it mean as much as it did in the past?
I don't think... I think university is... It's not essential. I think life is a course itself. I think people are pushed down the uni route when I didn't do the uni route, and I think I've learnt so much of not doing that.
It's interesting. You left school at 16. You said, yes, your family had money, but your dad was very strict. And
he's still strict now.
Gave you £1,000 and you made it on your own. And that's a great story. And you proved by working your backside off that you could make something of your life.
Yeah, and I think it's a life lesson, the fact if he gave me everything, which at that time, I wanted everything.
Yeah.
The fact he gave me a hard time at a young age, it's allowed me to really work hard and establish what my passion and dreams really are.
Gemma, we're actually at loggerheads tonight on this. You think... I mean, I sound like a hypocrite, but it's not a byword to a job anymore, and you end up in debt.
No, I agree. I mean, I definitely think there is value in certain degrees. I think it's a challenge because there are certain degrees that aren't applicable. There are other degrees that are. Of course, if you have an apprenticeship, which I'm a big fan of, it means that you don't go into debt, you can get paid, you can get a job at the end of it. But I think there are ways in which you can do research to find out which degrees are actually in demand. And also, there are some companies that are working in collaboration with universities, telling them the skills they need, and will give them a year in industry. And I think things like that are getting much more pragmatic, I think, going forward.
Who was it who said was it you, Sam, who said your net work is your net worth?
Agreed.
What do you mean by that?
I think I think meeting the right people is great. I think putting yourself in the right rooms and shaking as many... One thing growing up is that I want to shake as many hands as possible.
OK, take this the right way, because we'll be friends after this. Isn't it easier if you come from a better background to have that network to succeed than if you don't? What if you're brought up in poverty? What if, you know, university is the aspiration? Because, frankly, that might be the only way to get on, expand your mind and get into a situation that you wouldn't before if you were more privileged.
I disagree. I think you can put yourself in certain rooms. I think you can go to certain places. There's loads of events every single week.
Social media, I guess.
Social media. And I think social media really allowed that to reach out to whoever you want. And I think in this day and age... learning is so free, and I think you can just meet whoever you want.
I think there's a really good...
I don't agree with that. I think it's great. I think there's more opportunities, but the reality is contacts are hugely important in order to get on.
Agreed.
You know, hugely important. You've had a little bit of a get up. Clearly, your parents know what they're doing. The fact they haven't given you everything.
I actually haven't had to get up. Yes, I went to a great school till 16, but I haven't been given money.
No, but you don't need. You've got great talent. Clearly, I'm talking about the general population, if you like, and we've got to get society to have a bit of a say in what society needs out of our education system. If we just take nurses as an example, I'm sick of hearing how many nurses we need, yet why are we charging nurses to go to uni to get a degree? Surely something can be done.
Don't start me about that. It's like dentists. We train for 10 years on the National Health Service and they go private.
But that's
honestly.
But let's sort it out. They say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll pay you, we'll make you a bloody good nurse, excuse me, you know, but you're going to have to work for the NHS for a certain number of years.
You also
Let's talk to business about what do you want from our kids in school.
Yeah. You also talk about how unis actually, there's very little face-to-face time now. My daughter was telling me, I'm not going to where she's going. There'll only be 2 terms in about 24 weeks. What are you doing for the rest of the year, Gem?
I think also the other challenge as well is that a lot of people are going to come out with, let's say, £27,000 worth of debt.
37.
Yeah, and exactly.
And that's a big decision to make when you're 16 to 18 years old.
Yeah.
But then you see that one of the girls, one of the producers who works on the show, said to me it was the best debt I ever took. She said you don't start paying it back until you get to a certain level. Did you know that if you start, you can't pay it, it just gets wiped off? If you go out the country for 4 years, who picks up that bill? But then do we get back, Serge, to the argument that, which will go down like a lead balloon, there are too many colleges and too many black... I'm always coloured by the fact that I found out years ago that you can go to the University of Kiel and you can do a degree in business and marketing and you can major in brand Beckham. What the hell does that do for you?
Exactly, and that undermines the whole education system as far as I'm concerned. Universities are getting £9,000 a year. The average that a head teacher will get per pupil is 5.5. We give them 36 weeks. My teachers work after school, Saturday mornings to make sure the kids get the exam. What are they doing for £9,000? Because there is no face-to-face. Pupil-teacher ratios are huge. It's all online. My kids have been to uni. I know what it goes. So I think it's a time maybe to have a look. If we ever get an education secretary here long enough to actually look at things, let's have a look at what society needs from our education system. Get every employer we can. What do you want for our kids? Let's start off with, you know what, we want them in on time every day. We want them to look appropriate. We want them to be there. We want a good attitude. That's never measured by anybody.
As an employer, I personally don't look at someone, I don't look at their education and also I don't look at their degree.
Which is great to hear, but the norm, I'm afraid, is, I did a cross-section upstairs, 90% of the people in the production office have a degree. I'm interested in this Sorry, go on.
I think apprenticeships. I look at apprenticeships.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah. What you said, just expand on that a bit. Experience, being paid for it, no debt, and probably if you prove yourself, you've got the job.
At the end of it, absolutely. And I think that is very pragmatic. But I think, therefore, it's 2 ways. It's not just about people trying to pick useful degrees, but it's also about employers embracing and giving people opportunities. Because also, from an employer's perspective, you get to train somebody up. You get to train them in your way, and you can spend 3 years training your way up to the position that, again, there are lots of companies out there that they won't even look at people unless they have a graduate degree.
So my Alice today gets the results. What tips for her and the other students who have decided today that they're going to go? What would you say?
OK, obviously, financially, it's going to be really tough. So here are my tips. First of all, look at student discounts. The National Union of Students, they say that they can offer people, if you go to and use all their discounts, they can save people over £600 a year in all the discounts. It's for clothes, it's for food, it's for
rail
phone
travel
bill.
If there were any trains.
Yes.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
And rail travel as well. You can get a third off of off-peak travel as well. Also using, go for second-hand books as well for your course, if it's obviously still applicable. Budgeting apps. Also, there are some bank accounts that will allow you to open up a new bank account and actually give you free money, as well as discounts on council tax as well. So you take advantage of student discounts while you can.
You're saying you can do it, Serge, very quickly. You're saying don't be pigeonholed. It doesn't have to be. Very quickly.
Also, very quickly, I just want to say about these apprenticeships. Ironically, the area where apprenticeships are growing are for top-end kids. All right, those kids are going to be all right anyway. I'm sorry, you're going to get the best. The businesses are looking around, these top companies, they're looking for the A-star kids. We need another option for kids who are great, got great talent and are willing to work hard.
Which is what this man is saying. Thank you to Serge, to Gemma and, of course, to Sam. That's it, then, another week of me covering from the big man. That apparently is the truth. I could get used to this. We're back Monday, 8 o'clock at your place. And just remember, before then, keep it uncensored. Ta-ra!
Biggest issue in Britain right now, undoubtedly, is cost of living. It is energy and all that goes with that, inflation. Look, I don't want the government to do very much. Step back from most of our lives. But, there's a point when you say, actually, these guys are getting a grip of it somewhere along the line. You want to believe that the system that is meant to be running things, the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, are going to somehow step in and make life just a little easier for the average person.
This is Talk TV News.
Good evening, I'm Nadira Tudor. A member of the so-called Islamic State Beatles has been sentenced to life in a US prison. Al-Shafi El-Sheikh, who's from the UK, was part of the group who filmed themselves beheading Western captives in Iraq and Syria, including British volunteers David Haynes and Alan Henning. Presidents Putin and Macron have agreed on the need for inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency to visit the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. The World Nuclear Watchdog has said fighting around the site in Ukraine is very alarming. And most London Underground lines have been down today as underground workers walk out. Members of the RMT union are striking over pay and working conditions. More strikes will take place tomorrow on the rail network. That's all for now. We'll have more after the talk.